welcome to the MGM Motorz podcast, episode 3. Hope you're all well. I'm Graham.
I'm Matt.
So, if you've listened to episode 1, we talk about Matt and his love for MR2s and so on. We're going to go into that a little bit more in detail today, as you will have seen by the thumbnail. So, first of all, Matt, for people that don't know, what made you get your first MR2?
So, we've spoken about Chris, my the best mate on this channel, and Chris from a very young age of 18, I think, had a Lotus and had high performance cars, and he had an MR2 turbo at one point. And I remember Cher's mum thinking the sticker down the side of it said Menthol Racing because of how quick it drove through, and it wasn't. Obviously, it was Mental Racing, who were a tuning company from Liverpool at the time.
Yeah.
And he had that, and I kind of always liked it when he didn't have it long before he blew that up, but I quite liked that one that he had. And what really happened was I got to the point where he was, and he's a bad influence on me as Chris. He's done this many, many times. But he sat there saying, get a proper car, get a fast car, because at the time I was rocking around in the 1.4 Saxo. Yeah. And before that, I'd only had the Clio and the Polos and whatever. And eventually, he banged on enough at get a faster car, get a proper car. And I sat down with him, and it was 2004. It was coming up to Cher's test, which he passed. But before that, I'd sat down knowing what the plan was, that I was going to get a faster car at some point once Cher had passed a test and that she'd have the Saxo. And I kind of sat there going, right, Chris, I have £3,000.
Yeah, because you were quite tight on your budget, weren't you, at this point?
Well, if I look back at it now, I said to my dad, I'm not having a midlife crisis car when I'm 50. I'm having it now. I was 22 and I bought that car, and £3,000 was all I had to spend on that car.
Yeah. And
I couldn't really afford to maintain it and upkeep it and get it, get the work done on it. And I bought, we'll come on to it more, but I bought a bit of a lemon. And realistically, looking back on it, probably shouldn't have bought it. Certainly shouldn't have bought that one. But again, because I had such a tight budget, I was kind of scraping the barrel at what I could get. But I think, wasn't necessarily a love of MR2s at that point. It was, I want a fast car.
Wanted something faster.
Yeah, for £3,000. And I think realistically, to get anything over 200 horsepower at the time, that I wasn't really interested in the fast Fords, and I think they were probably still a bit dearer than that for the
£3,000. You're still struggling to get a fast Ford, really, aren't you?
I think I was back then.
At that time, maybe an ST170.
Well, no, I think definitely not. 2000.
Oh, no, they were still new.
They were still big money. They were a new car. I mean, I'm talking RSTs and XR3s, which ain't even that fast. And
strong money at that time.
Yeah, so we sat down and we sat down with this thing called the Auto Trader as a magazine, because we barely had the internet. Well, we had the internet, but we didn't really have the Auto Trader in the way that we do now. And we went through and what do you get? And I would have loved a Celica GT4 at the time, but for the later ST205, that was too new. Yeah. Strong money. The Supras were big money, as they are now. Oh, yeah. The scandalous now. The line out of Fast and Furious. What's the retail on one of those? More than you can afford, pal. The Supras are now changing hands for more than the 355. So that says it all. Really.
I can well believe it.
Yeah. So the Supra was out. Nissan GTIR. I probably could have got into one of those.
Pulsar.
Yeah, the Pulsar. Yeah, but
I don't think you could have done it £3,000.
I could. There were a few floating around, but those gearboxes are made of dairy milk.
Chocolate gearboxes.
Yeah, so I was a bit wary of those. And yeah, Chris had the Toyota. He came along. Did he come along? No, I don't think he did come along, but he guided me down that. And really, that bang for the buck at the time for £3,000. I don't think there was a car out there that kind of fitted what I wanted.
Yeah.
Anymore. So that's how I ended up in it. It was love at first sight in terms of I saw that car. It was the red sports car. I was 22 years old. It was the first proper fast car I was going to buy. Bought it and went on to a long journey to get it to where it was. Got it magazine featured and all that sort of stuff.
You did a lot of work on it, didn't you? You did a lot
yourself. Yeah, I learned a huge amount, and I had to, because at the time I didn't have the money to pay for mechanics. Really, I was still very early on in my career. I was still in the call center at that time with you, and yeah, I kind of stumbled around with my spanners and limited knowledge that I had, and there were other people that I knew that helped me out. So Chris down the road, the sprayer, did help me do certain bits and bobs, and and I found very early on, I found a company called they're now a massive company in the MR2 scene, called Rogue Motorsport, and
they were quite small when you were dealing with them, weren't they?
Well, they just started out. That they were in their first unit. I think, I think they're now in their third or possibly even fourth unit. I'm not sure, but they they've become a massive team. They've pretty much, Patrick that started Rogue with Matt runs the 750cc MR2 championship.
Yeah.
So they're massively involved in the racing. So if you go down there now, it tends to be the racing stuff that you see. But yeah, it ended up going there. They started out, I think, as breakers, to be honest, bringing stuff over from Japan, and then they started developing their own products, and they did the low-rise pop-up lights that I had, and various other bits and bobs. And and they did a timing belt for me, and they started off on these various things. And I had it from the May of 2004 probably until the November of 2004, and everything seemed okay. I enjoyed the T-bar scene.
You had a few incidents with it, though, didn't you? Let's be honest.
Well, yeah. I mean, it wasn't a love affair with the car. I enjoyed the car, and it was happy to have it. And 22-year-old lad in a 2-seat sports car with the roof off is always going to be an appealing thing that you want at that age.
Isn't it? It's a fast car.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was great, but it was short lived, because it was literally probably 6 months at most, and pop and a loss of power, and it wouldn't run, and it got dragged up to my friend's unit, who is a mechanic. He's a bit of a Rain Man as well. He knows a huge amount of stuff. And we pulled the head off it, thinking it was possibly head gasket or whatever. And then we found a hell of a lot of silicon around the head. Where they just gummed up waterways and just bodged it, really, to sell it. So turns out I'd bought a lemon. And in the end it needed to have a full rebuild and have the engine pulled out.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of first tried to kill me.
Yeah.
If you remember, you had a certain ban on your driving license at that point.
Yes, I was unable to drive.
Yeah, so we were both working. We were both working at the same place.
We were, yeah.
Cher was working, I think,
Halifax in town. Yeah. She was still Halifax in town. I'm certain of it.
No, I don't think she was. I think she was in rugby at that point. I think that was later on. Yeah, I think she was in rugby. So, because otherwise, if she'd have been in Coventry, I'd have probably just carried on using the Saxo, and it wouldn't have been an issue. But because I think she was in rugby, she had to use a car to get there. So Cher had the Saxo. So I had no wheels, and because Chris was trying to help me out as a mate and do things on the cheap, it took a year to actually get the car up and running again. And initially, when we were kind of in the November and it had gone pop and we were trying to work out what had gone wrong, I went up there, and I think it was in the January, to be honest. So I think it had been a couple of months, and I was starting to get a bit frustrated. So I kind of went up there to try and do a bit myself and move it along. And when you're working away on something, you don't realise necessarily how cold it actually is.
No, you're right.
And it was January, so it was probably 4 or 5 degrees outside. wasn't warm, certainly. But you're working away, you're lifting, dropping. I actually dropped the engine that day, I think. Yeah. I certainly got it very close to dropping it. And you've worked up a sweat. You take your jumper off, you're in your t-shirt and jeans. So it's 4 degrees outside. I'm in a barn with no insulation really. Dropping an engine, lying on a concrete floor and doing the bolts I'm told to undo. So bearing in mind, I have no idea how to do this.
No, you are literally.
I'm literally being guided.
Told what to do, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I'd attempt it now. I think I'd feel more confident to do something like that now, having done it
this space
once. Well, Yeah, I don't know about buying something with a completely blown motor, but who knows? We may well do. But yeah, you know, and I think lying on the floor, and then I picked up a bit of a cold, and then we went to work the next day.
Yeah.
And your mum picked us up, and obviously she was working at the hospital, so we used to have to walk, didn't we, from work down?
It wasn't
sort of
a far walk.
It was about halfway down to the hospital, and she'd come up the other way, wasn't it?
Yeah, so you're talking what, 800-900 yards?
Yeah, but it was absolutely lashing it down.
The day in question, it was absolutely gunning it down. It was, the weather was bad.
And I'd obviously picked up a bit of a cold, not yet got any symptoms from it, from lying on the floor and working on the car. Then got soaking in that, and it took a while to get home, waiting for your mum and whatever. Yeah. No fault of her own, just traffic around there was always a nightmare. And your mum insisted on going down the M6 route. She didn't like the back lane route.
That's correct. At the time.
That was always a nightmare queue back up to the M6. So it took a bit long. So I'm sat in soaking wet clothes, bit of a cold already. And I then had a couple of days off because our shift pattern at that point was, it was only 7 days basically. It was 5 on, 2 off, and that included at the time Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know what it was. Let's say it was a Wednesday and a Thursday off for argument's sake, and I'd been asked to build a couple of computers for people. And because I hadn't got a car, the person that asked me to build them, I said, right, take me to Ballycom, who I used to use, buy the stuff, and then we'll come back and build it. Spent the day building the computer, built the first one, got everything installed, and it was that long ago. It was Windows XP. And went to build the second one and just felt absolutely rotten. And thought, I can't do this. I feel terrible. I'm going to bed. Went up to bed. Cher came back from work. Cher went nuts. Computer boxes everywhere in the living room.
Yeah.
House is a mess because I've literally dumped everything and gone to bed. She's going, what's all this mess? I feel terrible. And you've got a bit of man flu, blah, blah, blah. Usual sympathy that you get.
Very, very unsympathetic, your wife is.
She can be. And the next day I was due back in work, and I actually rang in sick, and, you know, and it used to be horrendous to have to ring in sick there because you had to get there were so many people that took the piss with sickness that
it was very much frowned upon when you called in sick.
Well, I'm sure you ended up having to ring the senior, one of the SSMs they were called, whatever.
Yeah, senior sales manager and senior service manager.
Yes, you had to ring them.
Yeah.
If you're going to be sick, and you know, so I rang them and I was like, I feel absolutely rotten. Cher's gone off to work, and you've got man flu. Cher's got to work, rang me 2 hours later, and gone, you sound even worse. I'm ringing the doctors, and I'm like, how am I going to get to the doctors? I've got no car.
Yeah.
So Cher's turned around, Cher's taken the rest of the day. I've come home, taken me to the doctors, and the doctors taken me resting heart rate at about 140 beats per minute or something ridiculous. Temperature at about 103.5 degrees, and literally said, you need to go to hospital now. And that was it. And Cher took me down there with a note from the doctor, and I was straight in, and I was in there for 5 days, and I was on prednisolone, which is a steroid. It was about 9 of them a day. Like, you'd shake me, I'd rattle sort of thing. I was on them, I was on amoxicillin, I was on nebulizers. And I came back from there 5 days thinking, I feel loads better.
Yeah.
Sound. And the doc had said, look, you're going to be knackered because this has really wiped you out. You need to have, you know, I think he signed me off for something like 4 weeks.
Signed you off for a while, didn't they?
Yeah, the 4 weeks came and went, and I thought, I'll go back to work. And I went back to work, and I lasted about 3 hours, and I just was not right. Ended up back at the doctor, and I think he had another 4 weeks. So yeah, that was the first time the MR2 tried to kill me. And it never really.
That time wasn't daft. That wasn't unsensible. That was just unfortunate weather.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the second time, shall we?
Yeah, second time, there's no one's fault other than me being an absolute idiot. So at the time, this was when I was working in Banbury. No, it wasn't. It's when I was working in. Where was I? I can't remember where I was working. I was at HSBC. I'd not long started at HSBC, and it was HSBC Rugby I was working in. So I got the car. I think by then it had been painted, I think, Possibly. Yes, it probably had.
Yeah, I think it had.
So because it was off the road for as long as it was,
I also think at this point, I've moved out of the picture at this point.
Yeah, you probably have. I don't think you were around
anymore.
No. So I think the car had been painted because I got it back at the end of 2005. I had it for the rest of 2006. Actually, it was towards the end of, no, probably hadn't been painted. Yes, yeah. Anyway, it had either been painted or not. It was near. But the kit had gone on and bits and bobs had been done, and I'd made it my own and built it into what I wanted. And Cher was using it. Cher was using it on a daily basis because that's right, I'd got moved to Wellingborough. So it was after I'd come back from breaking my arm, and they'd asked me to cover Wellingborough again, where they'd pay my expenses. And of course, I sat there and went, yes, no problem at all. I'll take my little 1.4 litre Saxo, or shares at the point, and go to and from Wellingborough, coining in the expenses at 45p a mile, no problem.
Exactly.
And each month that came in, that was more money that went towards the upgrades and paint jobs and whatever of the MR2. Exactly. And, you know, Cher was using the car, and Cher was being very sensible, bearing in mind she'd only passed the test a couple of years before.
Yeah.
And she'd literally gone from a 1.4 205 to a 1.4 Saxo to a 2 litre turbo MR2.
Yeah.
Quite a jump.
Yeah, big jump.
So she was being relatively sensible. And then the odd time I'd get to go and take the car out for a little blast and a little bit of a play.
Yeah.
You know, one of the boost pipes had sprung a leak, and the car over boosted massively and popped the knock sensor. And when an MR2 or any car of that era pops a knock sensor, it pulls all timing, pulls all boost. You get nothing. You get no
it
power.
It kills the engine, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, Cher had to drive the car like that to and from Rugby, because I needed the other car to get to Wellingborough, and there's no way I could have got to and from Wellingborough on it. So she had to use the MR2. And if you stayed off boost, and if you just babied it around, it was okay, but it wasn't ideal. It was like running it with an engine light on in limp mode all the time, sort of thing.
Exactly.
So I ordered the knock sensor, and one of the upgrades everyone did was put a GM knock sensor on instead of a Toyota one, which was slightly less sensitive.
Right, okay.
It would allow a bit more boost and all this and the other. And it arrived the Thursday evening, whenever it was in the August. And in a rush, I jacked the car up thinking, right, I'm going to lose the light. I need to get this on so Cher can drive the car. Like a Pratt, it's not on a trolley jack. It's not on axle stands. It's on a scissor jack. The one that came with the car.
And was it on the drive?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was on the path in front of the drive.
Which ain't that flat, really, is it?
It's flatter than the drive. That's why it was there.
It's flatter than it is flatter than the drive.
Yeah, your drive's a lot flatter than the one.
My drive is flat, but still not flat.
It's still not flat. So, but it's on the path, and Dean was there. Cher was in the house, and I've jacked it up, gone under, and the knock sensors on these are huge. It's 27 mil, some daft size that I didn't have. Didn't have a socket for. So being naive and stupid, I reached for the adjustable spanner.
Yeah, as you would.
As you would, which probably, had the car been on axle stands,
wouldn't have been
potentially would have been okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I had the right socket in the ratchet, I think I probably would have got away with it. But as it was, because I was trying to get the adjustable on there and trying to get leverage on it, I've actually pulled the car off the jack, whilst underneath it, with my arm above the subframe and underneath the exhaust.
Yeah.
And thank God Dean was out there, because Cher was in the house at this point. She heard me scream and came out. But yeah, I'm under the car and I've pulled it off the jack. And Dean and Cher managed to lift the car, not up in the air, but off the suspension enough for me to get my hand free and to crawl out. At which point I sat up and just went, because I was a smoker at the time, went, Dean, give us a fag, thinking, Christ, that was a near miss.
Yeah.
And Cher turned around and went, Matt, get in the car. And I was like, well, why? She just get in the car. And literally, because of the adrenaline of it happening, I think I hadn't realised what I'd done. Yeah. And I don't know, the camera's not going to pick the scars up because they're not that bad. But
I'll put some pictures of the scars up.
Yeah, but I don't know if I've got any, to be fair, but my arm was literally a Z, you know, from my wrist. So my forearm went down, and then my wrist was, you know, over by however many centimeters.
Yeah.
It was not pleasant. And as soon as Cher sort of said, get in the car, and I said, why? I'm all right. She goes, look at your wrist. And apparently, I literally went probably the same shade as this T-shirt. All the colour drained out of me.
Realisation of
oh shit. And like I said, I'd not long been working for HSBC at the time, and that obviously that call out whilst high on morphine the next morning to a boss that I hadn't worked with that closely, saying, I'm not going to be in for 6 weeks. Wasn't kind of something I look forward to, but they were brilliant, to be fair to them. They were great, but an eventful start to my career with them, dropping a car on top of myself.
And very lucky as well, because it could have been a lot more serious.
Oh yeah,
realistically, look how low an MR2 is. Stock MR2 is low.
Yeah.
You were lucky, so it literally nearly did kill you.
Yeah, well, it broke a couple of ribs, and broke my arm and or wrist.
And at that point, anyone else would have got rid of it, but you kept it and carried on modding it.
Yeah, so at that point, I'm thinking back and thinking, I don't think that car was painted at that point, to be honest. I think the painting came later on, but I'm really proud of that car, and I'm kind of. It's a shame it ended the way that it did, but I'd kind of put so much into it, and I couldn't put any more in, if you know what I mean. It was so when I got it, it was the basic of the basic turbo car. So it was a 1989. Which was the first revision, which came with the smaller brakes than the later ones. It came with 14-inch alloys, different suspension. Lots of stuff got upgraded as the car evolved.
What did you change on the car? So obviously it's a stock MR2.
What
did you change on it?
So the first thing I put on there was new wheels.
Yeah.
And it actually had 2 sets of wheels in its life with me. I put 16s on originally and then went to 17s after it was painted. It went through 2 exhausts with me. It had a Mongoose exhaust that I picked up and put on there. First thing you do, obviously, is decap them because you get massive power gains doing that, 25-30 brake. Then it had the Blitz Nurspec exhaust, which I loved.
That was scandalous. That was just
awesome. It looked the bollocks, and it was loud as anything.
Yeah.
So I did a Velside rear bumper. I did I didn't actually change the rear spoiler. It came with the rear spoiler on it that it had.
Which was off a later revision, wasn't it? It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was an aftermarket one. I think it was. Okay. I can't remember the name of the company that made it now, but it was the same spoiler that Cher's MR2 had, or very similar to the one Cher's MR2 had as well. I put Greddy Racer skirts on there, Greddy G Racer skirts, whatever they're called on there.
Yeah.
I put a 1 of 1 or 1 of 2 front bumpers on there that was made by a company in Coventry. Had it fully repainted, had retrimmed seats put in there. I did 2 subs, 1 behind each seat, upgraded door speakers, DVD head unit, blow off valve, obviously, turned the boost up, rebuilt the engine twice, rebuilt the gearbox. And when I say did this, I didn't do a lot of this. A lot of this was done by companies for me. You know, I fitted the body kit, which I'd never done anything like that before, so that was quite good to do. I did a bit of the prep when taking the engine out for the rebuild. I did a lot of the interior upgrades and stuff like that. So yeah, it taught me a hell of a lot, that car, and ultimately, what ended it was a faulty. I think it was a faulty water coolant expansion tank.
Yeah.
I think the spring stuck on that, and it popped the head gasket, and I had it rebuilt again, thinking it was just the head gasket, and it was never quite right. And I think it actually had cracked the block, and eventually I couldn't fix the overheating problems, and it just got to that point where it's like it's a dead course. What I probably should have done, because I'd gone as far as I had done with it, I probably should have just got a later engine and thrown a later engine in there.
Yeah,
and carried on.
You know, in the work you put on each train, you'd put in the rich time.
Yeah, but you know, I parted it out. I broke it for spares, and I had some great weekends doing that actually, because I had a lot of people come round and help do it and take parts off and stuff. And I got a much better one that was didn't need anything doing to it. It was already modified. The kit was already on it. Already had custom paint and wheels and all sorts of stuff like that. So, you know, it was the right thing to do. Looking back, would I do it again? Yeah. You know, I'll cut my teeth on that car, and I'd buy another one in a heartbeat if they weren't so rare and so bloody expensive now.
They are expensive now. So obviously you had one that killed you, or nearly killed you twice. You then went on and bought another two, albeit one for you and one for the missus.
Well, Cher actually had Cher's one whilst I had the first one.
Yeah. It already killed. It already tried to kill you twice.
That one had, yeah.
So the second one you bought,
yeah.
What, you didn't do anything to it, did you? Or you didn't do a lot to it?
I did a few bits. Did an intercooler upgrade. I think it had already been decatted. I changed the exhaust because it had a Jap speed exhaust on there. I put the nurse spec on there.
Yeah.
Painted the wheels gold. Little bits and bobs. I didn't.
Yeah.
You know, I made it my own.
Yeah, it was more. Yeah, I was going to say it was more making it your own than modifying it as such.
Yeah. So when we talk about the love affair with the cars, with the MR2s, it wasn't actually a love affair of these are the best cars ever and I want to be involved with them. It was pretty much all to do with the club scene.
Yeah.
So
I was going to come on to that because you massively got into the shows and the Toyota Owners Club show.
Yeah, the MR2 Owners Club. Yeah. Yeah, so I did a lot of shows with that, and you know, we went to a show, and I'd said to Cher, because she still had the Saxo at this point, and I said, once I get my next promotion, we need to change your car. I subsequently got the next promotion, and we'd been to a few shows, and she said, what do you want? And, you know, all credit to my missus, she's clearly got good taste in men and cars. She said, she straight away said, Subaru Impreza, I want an Impreza.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And by this point, obviously, you could do insurance quotes on the internet. So I sat and done the insurance quote on the internet and went, yeah, babe, that's 1,200 quid for a standard car.
Yeah, they were a bit rich, weren't they?
Well, yeah. And I sat there going, that ain't going to stay standard in a million years. So I left it with her. She come back. She said, a Supra, fancy a Supra. So I looked for a Supra. And I should have bought one, to be fair, because the insurance was cheaper. The insurance of the Supra was 800 quid rather than 1,200 quid.
Okay.
So, but again, that was, you know,
still big though at the time.
Still a little rich at the time. And then we went to JAE down in Peterborough, which was the biggest show of the year for the MR2 lot in terms of attendance and stuff.
Well, for the Jap scene in general.
Yeah, one of the biggest meets of the year. And we went down to Peterborough, and you know, we'd taken all our camping gear. Made a lot of friends at that show that are still friends now. Not that we've seen for a long time, but we still talk to them regularly on Facebook and things like that.
Yeah.
And Cher's come down and we're driving back. I said, you had any thoughts on a car you want? Because obviously we wandered around, and I was thinking maybe an FTO or something like that from Mitsubishi, or, you know. And she, I know what I want. I want an MR2. And that was that. And it was that club scene that sold her on that. And then, of course, I started looking for that one, for her car. And, of course, found the perfect car for her. And it was a stunning car. It was all over modern. It had the full border body kit on it. It was painted in Rover.
Awful immobiliser, from what I can remember.
I don't know. It was a Toad one. I can't remember that being.
Yeah, I remember when I borrowed it and the alarm just kept going off.
Oh, yeah, it did have a temperamental alarm at times. I'm trying to remember the colour. It was Rover Amethyst, I think it was called.
It was
like that.
For anybody watching, if you remember the 220 Tomcat.
The Tomcat, yeah.
The flagship purpley colour. It was that colour, and it did look stunning on the car.
With a black roof, with a pearl blue through the black roof on 18s, which arguably shouldn't have been on.
They were big. It did make it very stiff.
Yeah, but it wasn't a fast one. It was a non-turbo.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed to be fast, but it did look the part. And Cher had that for 3 years, I think she had that for. And unfortunately, like a lot of the UK cars, rock killed that one. And it could have been welded, it could have been fixed, but in reality, you're looking at it and going, it's just not worth the money for what it needed. And then she got her Impreza that she wanted. So
she got there in the end.
Yeah, but after we bought that, not long after that, we did the first show of the year, which was Jack Fest at Castle Combe. I'd already killed mine by this point and was looking for another. I'd agreed the deal on the one I was having, but it wasn't quite ready to collect from Portsmouth. And
that second one you got had a racing clutch in, didn't it?
Well, both of them had upgraded clutches in.
But the second one, because I remember driving the second one. How did you live with that daily? Because I drove, I can't remember where we were going, but I followed you and I was driving that. Mate, how stiff was it? It was ridiculous. How could you drive that daily?
Well, you obviously missed leg day at the gym, didn't you? So
We both know that I don't miss leg day at the gym.
Well, you do. You've got chicken legs and big arms. You just do arm day, don't you?
Well, I'm going to throw up a picture of me and a leg press.
But no, in reality, I think, would I live with that now? No, I wouldn't. But you become, you just know the car, don't you?
You do.
You could slip the clutch. You didn't need pushing all the way down, and you just got used to it. And I think it was only a problem when you were trying to get it off the line. That was when it was problematic. Once you got it off the line, you went through the gears that quickly in those cars that
because it was Porsche quick, wasn't
it? It was 305 horse on the dyno, and it was light. Obviously, they were quite a lot lighter. And well, I'll tell the story of the 911 and the convoy. Well, there's two 911 stories with that car. The first one was I was leading a convoy down to Canvey Island. Was it not Canvey Island? Mersey Island in Essex.
Canvey Island's Kent way.
Well, Mersey Island is Essex, so they're both East Coast.
They're down that way.
Yeah, Mersey Island was hosting JAE. So we're going all the way down the A14 and then off wherever we had to go off. And I've led the convoy of probably 6 or 7 cars, and we've all got walkies in the cars.
Yeah.
Shares at the back of the convoy, keeping it all in tow, keeping up with it. And all you've heard there's a 911 that's come past us on the right hand lane of the A14, and all you've heard over the radio is Cher going, "Matt, leave the Porsche alone." And then you've just heard my mate Kev go, "Cher, too late." And we'd just gone toe to toe down the A14, and it kept with it quite comfortably. Both of us grinning like madmen. It was just great. The funniest one with it, and I'll probably wrap it up here because I don't want to go on for an hour. But the funniest one was down an unnamed motorway in the Midlands, very empty, very late at night.
Starts in 6 and ends in M.
What?
The motorway.
Yeah, it was a motorway. Yeah, and I'm doing a steady sort of 80, and you can recognise Porsche lights from quite a long way off.
Yeah, you can.
And I saw this, the motorway's empty. I've seen these lights approaching quite quickly, so I've just flicked it from 5th to 3rd, foot down and gone, because I knew he was going. And we've literally gone toe to toe down the motorway for a good mile and a half, both hammering the car.
Sticking to 70.
Hey.
Sticking to 70.
Yeah, he's sticking to 70. Both hammering it to 70. And we've both got off at the same junction. And I'm going left and he's going right. And he's put the window down. I've put mine down. He's going, "What the hell have you got in there?" I was like, "It's just a 2-litre turbo." What's in yours? And he goes, I can't remember if he said 3.6, 3.8, whatever's in the Porsche.
Yeah.
And he goes, he said that. And I goes, "How much was yours?" He goes, 80 grand. I went, "Mine was 6," and then took off.
It's literally the Fast and Furious with a Supra and the 355, ain't it?
It was, yeah. Not
the end
quite,
of the race.
Yeah, not quite the same retail of one of those, but no, it was. But yeah, they were great cars, and I don't know if I've said this on it. I absolutely adore the house that I live in currently, and we've just gone through and renovated it all. And
yeah, you have, yeah.
Cher is a fantastic designer and has come up with brilliant ideas that have gone throughout the whole house. So I would be loath to do all of that, then to go, right, we'll sell it and move on.
Yeah.
And there's 2 of us here and 2 little Jack Russells, Millie and Molly, that we really do not need more room.
No, you've got more.
We have 2 guest bedrooms, plus my office, plus our bedroom. The house is plenty big enough, and the kitchen.
You didn't need any more room than your previous house. You didn't need it, but obviously
no, we didn't need it. We wanted the extra bedroom, and we wanted the the things that came with that. But ensuite and things like that, the share wanted. But we've done all of this, but literally the only thing that holds this house back is the lack of a garage. And if I was able to, if there was the room to build a garage on it or to do something, and short of digging down and putting one of those car lifts that lift the drive up, and I think that's probably incredibly expensive to do. Short of doing something like that,
be worth it though.
But there isn't really. There is space for another car. We've got 3 at the moment, and the driveway's a 4-car driveway.
Yeah, you can't have 4 cars on that drive. However, it's tight, isn't it?
No, you can get 5 on if you park them the right way, but
yeah,
it's not so much that. One, I'd get shot by share if I did go and buy another car. And I mean,
hide the gun.
Well, yeah, but I mean properly. There's that. The second is, like you say, it's not ideal for space. It's not, and it's not ideal with it being outside. No. If you buy an MR2 now, even if you buy a late one, it's 22, 23 years old.
Yeah, it needs to be in
a garage. It needs to be in a garage. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing that stops me buying another one. Do I regret getting rid of it? Yeah, I regret getting rid of the Rev 4, but there's too many cars to drive in this life to stick with one. So
absolutely,
would I be as into the BMs now if I'd stuck with Toyotas? Probably not.
No, I think your M2 would be.
It'd be a new Supra.
See, I don't think it would be. I think if you'd have stayed in the Jap scene, I don't think you'd have gone new. I think you'd have a twin turbo Supra.
Well, if I had the garage space, but again, that's a 22-year-old car. You can't use that as a daily. That's the problem.
Yeah, true.
That's the problem. But we digress and can go on about this racing. I think there's another episode in that after my Instagram post today is of favorite Jap car of all time and what would you in a dream car garage, what would you buy? There's all sorts of things like that we can talk about.
I think that's definitely an episode to come. The dream car garage, the 3-car garage, the hangar. There's a few.
Yeah, exactly that. But yeah, that's how I got into the MR2 scene. And even since leaving the scene, I've gone back to a couple of shows because I've got a lot of mates that are still in that scene.
I mean, even when you got the 330, we went on a day with them and went cruising around. Was it Derby or somewhere like that?
Yeah, it was Derby. It was Blissfield Reservoir. It started at, which is up that way and going out there. We had a great, like I say, great day.
It was a good day.
Years after, I think 2012, maybe. Well, I can't remember. It's probably later than that. Actually, I went to JAE and I had to find my car in general parking because it had the German badge on it.
Yeah,
then carry all my gear in, which was a pain.
No stands for you.
No stands for me. But I went because of seeing my mates that were in that show, and it is a great show. And hopefully, it's going to go ahead this year. But I've not found the scene has changed. The car scene is not the same as it was 15 years ago.
There's a lot more restrictions. I mean, I work in Birmingham and I drive, depending on which way I'll go into work, there's signs saying something along the lines of car cruisers will be prosecuted and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just...
But just in terms of...
20 years ago, that didn't happen.
Well, it did. How many cruises did we go to where the police would pretty much turn up and it'd be like a scene out of Too Fast, Too Furious?
Yeah, but then if you go to an organised one, because there were organised cruises,
the
police would be there, but they'd be walking around. And
that's why we have got a show we've got to go to this year, which is Max Power Live, which is all the retro stuff. We've got to go to that, but yeah, I mean, even the styling hasn't. The styling's changed now.
But that's the same with anything. I mean, if you look at. We are digressing massively, but if you look at the 80s style into the 90s style into the noughties style into now, it's evolved, it's changed. I mean,
but when I look at the car
Fast
scene,
and Furious franchises, because ultimately that's where you're looking at.
Yeah, of course it is. But when I look at the scene now, everyone kind of does what we do, which is OEM plus. Yeah, you get people that go for the BBS wheels and go for the aftermarket wheels. And go for the CS hood, which I'd love to put on the M2 and things like that. But there's no mad body.
No one goes crazy. They do. It's just you don't see it as much. It's not as
yeah. And that's what I mean. What you used to like going to the cruises and meets about was people who built stuff. People had gone.
It was built, not built.
I've built this. Yeah, it wasn't. I've bolted this on. I love my 4 Series, but let's be honest. All of it is off the shelf parts that fit.
Yeah, it is.
It's not any, none of it's sort of me going, what if I weld a bit in here or fix a bit in here? None of it's that. It's all just welded in. But that is definitely another episode in itself. But I knew I'd waffle on. I think I've gone well over the half an hour I suggested.
You are, but no drama.
So apologies for that, guys. Thank you for listening and paying attention. I shall come up with the next episode with Graham, and it'll probably be him doing more of the talking next time and me interviewing him. So yeah, thank you for that, guys, and I'll catch you all soon.
See you soon, and that's how the MR2 nearly killed Matt. Take care. See you in episode 4.